Hi, so this video will just be a quick introduction to the American experimental composer Alvin Lucier's piece for the solo amplified triangle named the Silver Streetcar for the Orchestra. That's its name. It's not for orchestra, it's for a single triangle. Pretty fun name, but yeah. The video will just be a surface kind of level analysis of how the piece really functions, what is it going for, what is it exploring, and how you should be listening to it, or how I think you should be listening to it. The more deeper level analysis on how the triangle makes these overtones, or how the sound effect really works, or why is there amplification, or all that sort of more physical or scientific or theoretical stuff. I won't get into those. If you really are interested, I suggest you look on some paper or thesis on the matter, because I think there is a few, and there is a paper that I'm going to include in the description, which I mentioned in the video, but it's also a pretty surface level analysis at that. First of all, a bio on Alvin Lucier. He was born in 1931, passed away in 2021. Very, very interesting American experimental composer. A lot of fascinating works for you to explore out there. For example, this piece, the Silver Streetcar for the Orchestra, for the amplified solo triangle, is for solo triangle. You have another piece called the Music for the Magnetic Strings, piano with magnetic strings. So he basically put a bunch of magnetic strings in a piano and play that. If you want to know how that sounds, you can go Google. It's very, very interesting and very beautiful piece. He have different pieces with large machines that kind of moves slowly, and use those to create music. For example, the In Memoriam John Higgins on my score video channel, where he have a clarinet and a slow sweeping pure wave oscillator. He has other very famous pieces called the Music on a Long Thin Wire, which is with a piano wire wired across the room, activated by a amplified oscillator and with magnets on either sides. Some of the most interesting works in the experimental classical music canon, in my opinion. If you're interested in this piece, you definitely should check out other pieces. Most of his other works are easier to get into. I would compare him with Feldman in a case, Morton Feldman, in that it's music that changes very, very slowly, though I guess the pattern is a lot more different. But if you like Feldman, if you like experimental music, I think you should definitely check out Alvin Lucier. So let's move on to the piece itself, the Silver Streetcar for the Orchestra for amplified solo triangle. The gist of this piece is this exploration of natural reverb of the triangle, because the triangle as an instrument have no definite pitch. The different ding that you hear when held on different positions of the triangle, or how you mute it or where you strike it, produces different sounds. That's not defined, especially when the triangle itself doesn't have a defined size. It varies between different pieces and requirements and interpretations. In this case, the size of the triangle doesn't really matter. It's more so kind of how you hit it and the relationship between that and the sound it produces, and the way the performer themselves kind of conceive those sounds and how they decide to transform it. The piece basically requires the triangle to be hanging from a stand. Player taps it with a metal beater on one hand, and damping or muting the triangle on the other hand. And basically the piece is about the player focusing on one of the five variables that he laid out in the performance or the written sheet music, and the performer basically focus on any one of those variables until it kind of produces this sound quality or this specific overtone that the performers themselves hears. When they hear that, they kind of dwell on that one variable for some time, until slowly moving on to a different variable and then a different variable until all five variables have been reached. Lucier designated the piece to be around 15 to 20 minutes. Though there are longer performances, there are shorter performances. I think the most famous one on YouTube is around 7 minutes or 8 minutes. But the kind of the idea behind the piece is you focus on these variables, and the quality of these variables are different, and you focus on them long enough for the listeners to kind of hold on to it and notice that there is a change that occurs until all the changes get through. This is why I said earlier that I think Lucier is very similar to Feldman in this kind of slow changing of character or slow developing of this idea or this theme per se. So here are the 5 variables of the piece. So number 1 is tempo. Oh, actually, before all of that, Lucier have written on the score for what he wish the beginning of those 5 variables are, but in most performances they don't particularly follow them, especially the tempo and the loudness or the dynamic, or how hard you strike the triangle. Those 2 variables, a lot of performances change a lot. Most of the stuff that you hear are either slower or faster, or they're louder or quieter or whatever. But here, those doesn't really matter in my opinion, because the piece is about the changes in those 5 variables. The beginning setting for those 5, in my opinion, doesn't really change or affects how the piece sounds. And even with the person who this piece was dedicated to, Brian Johnson, his performances of this piece also doesn't quite follow the beginning variables. So it's fine. Just listen for the changes themselves. So on to the 5 variables themselves. Number 1 is the tempo, or how fast you hit the triangle. On the written score, it says that the reference tempo is eighth note equals 320. Though, as I said before, a lot of people start faster or slower. The player basically gradually accelerates or decelerates the tempo slightly faster or slower than the reference tempos throughout the entire piece. The second variable is loudness, or how hard you strike the triangle, or the dynamic of it. The starting reference dynamic is MP, and the performer basically gradually raises or lowers the dynamic level slightly higher or lower than the reference dynamic. Number 3 is the damping, or the muting, or how hard you mute the triangle, the muting pressure essentially. The player grasps the triangle with the thumb and forefinger of one hand, starting at a pressure of half P, basically halfway between completely damped, dead sound, as he states on the written score, or completely free, so the free ringing. The player increases or lessens the pressure, varying degree of resonance, because a lot of where the overtone comes from, or the resonances of it comes from, is from how hard you mute the triangle. Number 4 is the damping location, or where you mute the triangle. The player basically slides his thumb and forefinger of his damping hand as slowly as possible along the side of the metal bar of the triangle. And the final variable is the beater location, or where you hit the triangle. The player slowly moves the beater as smallest as possible distance per tap along the length of the metal bar. Basically, throughout the entire performance, the performer focuses on either one of those variables and to produce different sounds. And when one sound is achieved, this player stay on that sound for some time before slowly moving to another one, like I said before, until all 5 variables have been focused on and the piece ends around 15 to 20 minutes. So to understand what I'm saying here and to understand how it really sounds in the performance, I will use the score video I used on my channel, which is performed by Rainer Romer. The 3 areas which I pick is at the beginning, middle, and the end portion of the performance. I don't exactly know which variable he's focusing on either of 3, although I would imagine the last one being the dynamic of getting louder. The first 2 is kind of harder to grasp. I think the middle one is about damping pressure. Not sure about the first one though. mainly because I don't see the performance, and for most of the performed ones where you can see the video, you don't quite understand what he's doing anyways. You just kind of enjoy the sound that it creates. So here are the 3 clips. So this one is around the 1:30 mark at the beginning of the piece. For me, when I listened to this part, which was the first thing that jumped out to me when I listened to it for the first time, you have this sort of like natural string harmonics sort of sound, but it's very soft, it's very continuous, and it's just ringing in the background and switching between like 2 different tones. I'm not quite sure if everyone can listen to this and get the exact same experience or the exact same results, but that's kind of how I heard it in this portion of the piece. Here is the second variation. It happens around 9:20 mark on the piece. It's this overtone or this kind of sound that is created, the ding sound of the triangle, that's buzzing in my primarily left ear, and some in my right ear too. Very different from the first sort of effect that's created, although of course there's an 8-minute gap in between, so there are many different gradual changes that occur in the place, but I think cutting to this and compared to the first one gives you a very good idea of what the piece is going for and the kind of differences that you can kind of notice when listening to the piece. So the final segment I'm going to kind of show is at the 16:50 mark of the piece. It's this kind of very muted effect on the triangle compared to the previous 2. Although you can definitely still hear the overtone in the background, but it's very low. And this is right before the final high dynamic, high like volume variation of the hitting of the triangle. And I think this, in comparison with the first 2, is less easy to listen to, especially if you don't have a headphone. But you can kind of see from these 3 variations how much differences there are in the piece and what you can do with just a triangle by hitting it with a different way. This kind of reminds me of Stockhausen's microphony, especially number 1. If you listen to Stockhausen's lecture on that piece, he basically have like a mic as a performer and somebody hitting a tam-tam, and the different distances between the mic and the tam-tam creates this different effects. I think this is sort of similar. Obviously, the 2 pieces sounds very different, but if you're interested in this Lucier piece, you should definitely check out the Stockhausen's microphony. So like I stated at the beginning, I won't go into the physics of how the overtones are created and how these effects are created and how they affect each other. But if you're interested, there is a paper on the entire topic called The Role of the Performer in the Music of Lucier. It's written by Tim Bush in the Journal of Experimental Music Studies. Like I think I may have stated in the beginning of the video, but this paper basically goes into detail on kind of the philosophy of the piece, especially how Lucier redefines the role of the performer and what is exactly the performer. One major part of it basically talks about how the performer is sort of the triangle and not the player, and the player is kind of the listener or the audience. And when they listen, they focus on what the performer, the triangle, is doing, and with that, they kind of changes it. I think the paper is very interesting. They provide different explanation on the piece itself, and the spectrograms on different parts. I can show one right here of 2 different performances with different triangles and how different the spectrograms look. If you're interested, definitely check out that paper. It also have 2 more analysis, one on the I'm Sitting in a Room, the very, very famous Lucier piece, and the other being the Music on a Long Thin Wire, which I talked about before, where he strung a piano string across a room and kind of let this machine vibrate it with 2 magnets on either side. There's a spectrogram for that, and the I'm Sitting in a Room. So if you're interested in this piece or just Lucier in general, this paper is very interesting. And if you like this piece and you want to explore more Lucier, here are some suggestions. You have the 2 circles for flute, clarinet, violin, cello, piano, and electronics. Very slow piece, similar to those with the slow sweep pure wave oscillators. If you want to find those pieces, there are the music for piano with slow sweep pure wave oscillators. There are the In Memoriam John Higgins on my score video channel for clarinet and slow sweep pure wave oscillators. All of those are very kind of slow sweeping piece, like the name of the machine. Slow development, very like slowly rising or lowering of the pitch, and different overtones is created in those. Very interesting. And they are usually pretty long too, so if you just want to have something in the background, kind of like a atmospheric or ambient sound, great choice. There are the very famous I'm Sitting in a Room, which is the manipulation of vocal, or like kind of the looping of it at least. Very many papers written on it, probably a bunch of video on it too. If you want to find something similar to that, you can also find the North American Time Capsule, which is also kind of a exploration on speech or the sound quality of speech. There are the Music on a Long Thin Wire, like I stated before. There are the music for piano with what's it called, amplified sonorous vessels, or the other piece, the music for piano with magnetic strings. Both of those pieces are very interesting kind of variations on the piano concept in a way. I think you'll enjoy that a lot. Thanks for watching. If you are still here at the end of the video, obviously you enjoyed it. I may or may not make more video like this in the future. Probably will. We shall see. And yeah, have a great day.